within 230 people, there will be some who are properly dangerous. They will have traumatic backgrounds. They will have been living lawless lives before they've got anywhere near northern France. And when they get to the UK, there is little to rein them in. You know, within 24 hours, they're in migrant accommodation from which they're free to roam around and do whatever they want. So this is mad. It's completely and utterly mad. So I'm Isabel Oakeshott, and this is the Westminster Report, and there's really only one story that we need to kick off with today, and that is the new mega-dinghies that appear to be coming over the channel. Now, the BBC called it a small boat. That was a complete non-starter. For anyone who's seen the boat, it's most definitely not a small boat. This thing is a mega-dinghy. I'm not even sure it even really qualifies as a dinghy. It's the size of a sort of small aeroplane, really, more of a inflatable ferry. And on that boat came over 230 illegal immigrants, 230 people breaking into our country. And this has really, I think, raised the stakes in the Channel crossing crisis. Until now, Andy Burnham, our new Prime Minister, has been sort of getting away with saying, well, you know, the small boat numbers, small boats, that phrase again, are coming down dramatically. Labour's plan is working. Now, I know most of us are not buying into this at all. I happen to think that the net numbers coming over aren't changing at all. I think that at least as many as that reduction that Labour are claiming are coming over by different means. How do I know this? Because I've spent a long time over the past year actually working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes, investigating how does the people smuggling operation work. Last autumn I was in Libya looking at what happens in North Africa, where many of these journeys to Europe begin. So a lot of people come up from sub-Saharan Africa, and so I've heard about it from the African side, and we've spent a long time in northern France doing stuff that no other news or radio station is doing. So I know a fair amount about how this works and how the people smugglers advertise these crossings to potential expensive bums on seats, and how are they marketing them. It's quite interesting. There's special terminology for all of this. So in people smuggling lingo, channel crossings or other crossings to the UK, whether it's by ferry or in the back of a lorry or even in a car, they are called game, G-A-M-E. They refer to that as game, and they talk about in their adverts for places on boats or in cars or lorries, they talk about something being safe game, guaranteed game, you know, and they almost give it a kind of rating, a Trustpilot rating as to how likely you are to make it to the other side safely. And the most expensive game is actually to come over in a car. That, I suppose, is the most risky for whoever the driver is, because they clearly know that they have got somebody illegal on board. But there are other advertised methods, and lorries, again, it's more expensive than coming over on the boat. And then there's buses as well, and we know this is happening, and in fact I've got footage of people having hidden in buses coming over, so we can certainly be showing that at some point in the near future. So the point of this is that I just don't think the numbers are falling. They're just coming over in different ways. It may be that the numbers temporarily are going down in terms of those channel crossings by dinghy, and yet now we have this trade evolving to these huge vessels. Not sure they really qualify as vessels. That raises the stakes on so many levels, doesn't it? Because this is dangerous. You know, I'm so anti the whole thing on every level, primarily from a British taxpayer point of view and a national security point of view. But I'm also anti it on a human level. It's so damn dangerous. you know, and if you've been in the water around those migrants, and I haven't, but my colleague on Talk has, you see how really difficult it is to actually haul yourself onto these boats when they're about to take off and they're about to launch. And people drown. That is a reality. People drown. There are bodies washed up on the beaches in northern France. This happens periodically. It's not reported very much. There are also bodies coming over on these dinghies, another thing that is very underreported. And periodically we hear, oh, a woman died of a cardiac arrest or whatever. I mean, generally, these people have drowned or they have been crushed to death in these stampedes to get on the boats. So on a human level, this is just astonishing that this is allowed to continue, that the left somehow think that it's the kind of nice thing to do to allow people to keep coming by this route, rather than to say, actually, we should have zero tolerance of this on either side of the channel. It is a human disaster, this. And when you've got that many people on an inflatable that will not be seaworthy and will not be tested in any way for the type of journey that's being made, that is a recipe for a very, very large-scale disaster. I don't believe that Andy Burnham is remotely interested in this crisis. I think he's trying to avoid talking about it at all costs, really. I mean, what's his little token effort to show that he's aware of the crisis? He went down to Dover and stood next to an empty inflatable boat. Give me a break. I mean, how does this in any way add to his understanding of what a scale of crisis this is that we're facing? Why doesn't he actually go to northern France? Why doesn't he go and do a little tour of those horrendous camps in Dunkirk? I'd love him to spend the night in one of those camps. He couldn't, because it would be extraordinarily dangerous. There are semi-automatic weapons going off in those camps. They are ruled by fear. This is a highly organised racket, and a stretch of northern France has basically become a kind of lawless rogue state. It is not an exaggeration to say that areas of that coastline are controlled by criminal gangs, and they are from, in large part, countries which are pretty hostile to the UK. Rogue states, countries that do not wish us well, and we don't know much more about them. And this is just completely insane, isn't it? Now, if you've got 230 people coming over on a boat, as Ian Collins, our colleague at Talk, was saying this morning, well, most likely 210 of them are perfectly okay people who don't have criminal intentions. I'm afraid that many of them will probably be drawn into criminality because of the manner in which they've come over to the UK. And we can go more into this on other programmes, but you know, a lot of those people have not paid to be on the boat. They are going to have to repay whoever as their handler is by providing labour when they get to the UK. So they're going to be committing low-level crime just because they've got to repay their handlers. But in terms of what threat do they pose the British people and our society, the majority of them are very low-skilled, not educated people who are just looking for a better life. Now, if I lived in Eritrea or Sudan and I had the means to give my family a better life by getting myself to the UK, I think I'd probably give it a go. Sort of well done them, except that they're not bringing their families. 99% of them are young men, not bringing anyone at all, and it's very, very difficult to bring a family. I mean, getting on those boats as a woman is pretty nigh on impossible. You have to be hauled onto the boat by the men on board. So, and we've seen this week, we've seen some pretty shocking images of babies being handed over. I mean, it's really, 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 really dangerous. But my point is that I don't blame these people for giving it a go. Why wouldn't you? You know, the pull factor, the level of magnetism that there is about Britain is something that is of our own making. We've made it a very attractive option for people. But most of those people are just going to try to build some kind of new life in the UK. It's all going to be, all of it, in the first few years is going to be off the back of the British taxpayer. Necessarily so, because they will not be able to get a job until they've been granted asylum, until they've been granted refugee, and then they have refugee status, and then they are legally allowed to work. So they are going to be living off the back of the British taxpayer for the foreseeable. And I'm afraid that most of these people are not, they're not educated, they don't have skills, they cannot string a single sentence in English together. They can barely tell you what country they're from using the English word for the country in a discernible way. So they are going to be a big drain on the state, but there will, within 230 people, there will be some who are properly dangerous. They will have traumatic backgrounds, they will have been living lawless lives before they've got anywhere near northern France, and when they get to the UK, there is little to rein them in. You know, within 24 hours they're in migrant accommodation, from which they're free to roam around and do whatever they want. So this is mad. It's completely and utterly mad. And I think, you know, most of those who listen to talk and you know get so wound up about this, because each and every day we go, this can't go on, and yet it goes on. And what can we as voters do about it? I mean, we've made our views clear at successive elections. We don't want this to carry on, and yet no government seems willing to actually stop it. And we started this conversation thinking about, does this government have the political will to stop it? And my answer to that is no. Don't think they've got the political will at all. Did the last Tory government have the political will? Well, I think Rishi Sunak did, actually. But then so many people were out to thwart his scheme. You know, it's all about what can't be done rather than what can be done. And I can tell you from our experience of investigating this, there are an awful lot of things that can be done that would cripple this business, because it is a business, without having to actually send in the Navy. This dinghy was known to the French authorities, and the French do have lots of police down there. They're having a nice day out, aren't they? You know, they're wandering around the beach, you know, having a little drag on a cigarette, having a chit chat, and they, by and large, they don't go in the water. So the migrants know that once they're in the water, it's highly unlikely the French police are going to do anything to get them out of the water. This is all a performance. You know, now and again the French police will have a little win. You know, they will do something that looks as if it's stopped a boat. All that happens is the same passengers that weren't able to get on that particular departure simply have to wait a day or two longer to have another go. So the French police are many things, but they're not simply stupid. They are more than aware. They know, they tend to know when launches are happening, and you know, we know this because we spent so long in and around the camps in Dunkirk monitoring launches. I know where the key departure points are. We're very familiar with those. You know, if we as British reporters know that, well, of course the French, whose actual job it is to monitor that all day, every day and all night too, know exactly where the main departure points are. And they must, I mean, we've seen the gangs and their foot soldiers. We've seen where they get the petrol, for example, where they get the fuel for the boats. I mean, how about tackling just that simple thing? You know, stop the gas stations selling the fuel for the boats. You know, if you just tackle this at every stage of what facilitates it, then maybe you're not actually going to need to send in the Navy if you're the UK. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but there are an awful lot of options well before you get to that, which involve the French meaning it when they say they're going to try and help us, which aren't very expensive at all. These may not be predominantly channel migrants, but it's all linked to illegal immigration and how people try to make a few quid when they get over here. And that goes back to what I was saying about having to repay your passage. You know, I can't repeat this enough because a lot of people still don't quite understand it. If you're from sub-Saharan Africa, you do not have £1,400, £1,500 for a place on a dinghy from northern France to Dover. You don't. That is basically the average annual income in some of the most impoverished places in Africa where these journeys begin. It is completely ridiculous when you think about it to imagine that anyone from those places is going to be able to cobble together that kind of money. I mean, the average British person only has a few £1,000s savings or none. Most people don't have thousands of pounds, and remember, that's only one bit of the journey. People have got to think about this logically. Supposing that somehow or other all the relatives club together and they decide that they're going to send Ahmed over as a trailblazer, and Ahmed, once he's settled himself in the UK, gets to bring his wife and his children and his aunts and his uncles and his grannies, because that's often how it has worked. Even if everyone clubs together so that Ahmed has got his £1,500 for the boat fare, how is Ahmed getting all the way from Chad or from wherever it may be, Eritrea, Sudan? How are they getting all the way to northern France? Think about the mechanics of that journey. It isn't cheap, is it? So these people aren't paying. Most of them are not paying. When they get to the UK, they have to find a way to repay their handlers, and that is why we see so many of these car washes. It's not actually that new a thing. We saw them predominantly run, I think, by Romanians and Albanians, and now, you know, that is a sort of magnet for the type of people that are coming over, so that they can make a few quid. But it's also the whole Deliveroo, Uber Eats, all of that. I don't mind naming those companies. They know that they are linked to not doing anywhere near enough checks on the kind of subcontracting of accounts. That is all part of this whole racket. It requires a political will. It requires a mindset that says this is a national effort here, and we've got to look at every aspect of it, not just tinker around the edges, you know, make a little change here, make a little change there. I mean, Andy Burnham yesterday was pushing a policy about ending or tackling automatic subscription renewals, as if that's a priority of the British people. I mean, I know it's annoying. I've got a bunch of subscriptions, things that you get tempted to sign up to, but it's not eating away at me, you know, this. And if you really need the money, you're going to check your bank account and stop your direct debits and all of that. So I just think that you've got to actually understand that this is a political priority, and then say, I am going to, and mean it, I am going to do everything that it takes to stop this happening, and I'm going to tackle it at every level. And that means cracking down on all these fake barbershops. I mean, the money laundering racket that's going on in these barbershops, you know, streets. There are streets where there are several barbershops in one small town. You know, there's only that many heads that need their hair cut. This is money laundering in plain sight, and yet, you know, we've got politicians, HMRC and so on, focus on you know, different targets, don't they? Whereas there it is, right on your high street, you know, multiple times over. Why is that not tackled? And so on. We make it far too easy, our authorities. I don't think this crisis in the Channel will be solved until there's a new government, I'm afraid. You know, you'd like to think, if there was a terrible tragedy, which I really hope there isn't, because successive prime ministers and governments will have that blood on their hands. You'd like to think that, let's just say that MEGA-DINGHY tipped over in the middle of the sea, and the French authorities, their search and rescue vessels, by the way, kind of follow the dinghies out. They shadow them. They would be overwhelmed if 230 people tipped into the water, and a lot of them can't swim. Probably most of them can't swim. You'd like to think that that would be the turning point. Do you know what? I don't even think it would be. I'm not even sure that if 200 people drowned in the Channel, our spineless leaders would actually say, right, that is it. Because I just don't think they're really capable of it. I don't think they get it.